When purpose has been used to achieve purposelessness, the thing has been grasped. Too often we assign purpose to things in a desperate attempt to bend reality to us. In other words, we apply attributes and labels to things in order to box them into our perceived realities. For example, if we are an artist, our taste dictates the colours that we use. We may have connotations of different colours, say red for example symbolising danger, which makes us decide to use a less aggressive colour. However, once the artist is finished, this perception of red does not disappear. It is still within their mind, and with them only having their perception of the colour, they will apply this meaning/purpose of the colour in their own lives, taking it as the one true perception. The 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant labels the objects that are tied to our perceptions within space and time as appearances. Appearances can be likened to a mirror, with our minds attempting to mirror the intrinsic properties. These intrinsic properties, or as Kant calls them, things in themselves, can be thought of as being a substance which is by itself, with no human affection in proximity. What Kant would say is that due to us being placed within the spatial-temporal world of appearances, i.e. within space and time, we cannot see the thing in and of itself. The mirror is broken, and there is no way of securing any specific knowledge of the intrinsic through our spatial-temporal perceptions. In his words, we have no knowledge of the intrinsic properties of substances. If you've seen the film The Matrix, there is a scene where a child is showing the protagonist Neo how to bend a spoon. The child wants Neo to realise that although he thinks there is a spoon, there is no spoon in the reality of things. The point the child is trying to prove is that the perception of the individual determines the weight or value of that spoon. You can also attribute the same viewpoint to the concept of purpose. Purpose is the spoon. People assign meaning to purpose or use purpose to shape their own worldview. Returning to the quote I started with, when the purposelessness of purpose in relation to time and space becomes evident and understood, this creates a mental freedom of living in the moment. You go from the limiting point of view of excluding certain colours because of their connotations to saying, I'm going to use whatever colour I want. The existentialist philosopher Sartre also had a similar epiphany about objects lacking inherent purpose in his book Nausea. When the protagonist Requentin sits on a train seat, he realises that it is only a seat because the other passengers have mutually agreed to perceive it that way. From this, he considers that the object could be anything else, and the people around him would not recognise the change. This realisation reinforces the idea that objects lack inherent essence or purpose, and their meaning is imposed by convention created by a human hallucination. This moment of clarity, where something familiar, the chair, becomes absurd, is a manifestation of the nausea that he feels, a repulsion to the arbitrariness of life. Although it's understandable to feel overwhelmed by this, it can be avoided entirely with the help of a fresh perspective, one which chases absurdity and marvels at nature's mysteries. With this perspective prioritising getting to know nature and its complexities, the idea is that through an awareness of the complex mystery of nature, ourselves included, mixed with an understanding of our absurd place in it, we can retain our wonder without getting overwhelmed. Absurdity in this context is the feeling of universal oddity that includes a basic and intense wondering about the sense of things. It is difficult for us to come to terms with our temporal, ever-changing state. However, by looking into our absurd predicament, I will argue that we are able to derive a more sustainable sense of meaning, an endless fuel source that can spur us on through thick and thin. Look at nature. An effective method to bring this reality in the centre of our minds is to pay attention to what usually goes unnoticed, the intricacies in nature. For starters, looking at the intricate complexities around us humbles us, disproving our inner fallacy that we are distinct from these processes. You are a part of it, not an isolated ego. Not only does it humble us, the philosopher Spinoza goes as far to say that nature provides us with valuable clues to our role in the universe, and it is on us to explore it. Spinoza would encourage this, as the more you look, whether it's looking down at the grains in the soil or marvelling at the birds in the trees, the more you realise how big the mystery is. If this understanding is developed, it will invigorate you, sending you on your way to pursue life as a quest for knowledge, revitalised with an awe-inspiring enthusiasm to learn more about the mystery. Leonardo da Vinci viewed life in this way, a polymath inventor whose forward-thinking ideas were fueled by the mindset that to maximise his prolificacy meant he had to orient himself as if he was on a personal quest for knowledge. He believed that the most lived life is the inquisitive one, and to show courage over fear in unknown waters is a noble achievement. This justifies why it is vital to cultivate curiosity so as to maintain the explorative side of you which recognises the absurdity of it all. This will mean you will never take this life for granted again. Da Vinci's curiosity was also equal to his courage. When this is a harmonious relationship, we possess a childlike awe and wonder of the world. If this inner child is a dim light, we have lost sight of the magic of our absurd situation. If we want to rectify this, the French existentialist Albert Camus offers a quick exercise which he recommends you employ when you feel existential anguish. You must zoom out and recognise how many people there are and how little you are in comparison. This thought experiment should bring everything into perspective, making you realise how absurd it is what we choose to fuss over, how pointless our gripes are. Although this realisation can send us into a nihilistic pool of despair and anguish, if we familiarise ourselves with the reality, we can embrace our peculiar role in the universe and laugh at it. Alan Watts shared this belief, urging us to forget the nonsense that we think is important and feel yourself as the whole process. In his words, once you connect to the whole pattern of life, we become capable of enjoyment, of living in the present, and of the discipline which this involves. This is only possible when we strip away all hope of a future reward. However, you may ask yourself, without a future reward, how can I retain enthusiasm? The answer is to not look at a reward at all, that as a distraction, but rather enjoy the process so much that the prospects of a reward is just a bonus. This keeps your expectations in check so that you are not distracted by the illusion of an end goal. No end goal keeps you away from stressing over perfection, which only serves to demoralise you, as when you set yourself an impossible goal, you will find excuses more alluring and will want to quit it altogether. Once we have come to terms with this, we can harness the absurdity, as when we realise the fleeting nature of our predicament, everything which shouldn't matter to us dies, leaving with us the present moment, a formless state with no agenda. Our place within space and time is a microscopic drop in the universe's ocean, and the only thing that is real is the fleeting moment. As this reality is difficult to accept, we always attempt to micromanage our future by placing purpose where it does not belong, so try to be aware when you fall back into this. There is a huge weight which lifts once you realise we are all just floating in space and making it up as we go along. You begin to care less about trying to please people, making you lighter and more confident in situations. Of course, this is easier said than done, as our finite human nature and ego makes us averse to embracing absurdity. For starters, our fear of death is a powerful force that makes us avoid our reality at all costs, and in an attempt of desperation, we cling on to hopes and dreams, instilling our goals with an artificial meaning so as to trick our brains to keep us going. This, however, is a finite fuel, and when we inevitably lose the motivation, we will not have anything to fall back on. Closing thoughts. Simply put, we suffer from a lack of meaning because we live in denial of the true nature of our existence. We avoid our immortality and the absurdity that we are just floating in space. If we keep failing to accept our finite nature, we will feel overwhelmed, and in desperation, we will try and fail to control the world. This is an ungrateful attitude. As the writer Oliver Burkeman reminds us, we're lucky to have, on average, 4,000 weeks here, and we should be constantly amazed at the fact that our existence was even possible. We were almost nothing, not a thing. We didn't exist before birth, and that felt fine, so take your life less seriously and enjoy it. To finish with a quote by the writer H.P. Lovecraft, "The most merciful thing in the world is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity." Thanks for watching.